Welcome to the Empowering Perspective Podcast. I am your host, Dwayne Dwyer, and today I have a remarkable young man with us, and we are going to talk about money. Money, I'm telling you, like I know this is one of the things that kind of like a heartache for a lot of people. A lot of people don't know where to put their money. Some people sitting on the nest egg, they don't know what to do with it. They want to go pay a financial planner a whole boatload of money to tell them how to do it. But I have a young man here, and I'm telling you, he's going to blow your socks off with the information because we're going to talk about basic investing concepts. So what I like to do is just say a warm welcome to Mr. June Collier. And sir, just welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Dwayne. I appreciate you inviting me. It is a pleasure to be here today.
Man, it's an honor to have you, man. And again, it's good to see you again, my brother. I haven't seen you in, man, it's been a couple of years, man. So
it's been a while.
If you don't mind, it has been. Yeah. If you don't mind, just kind of introduce yourself to the people. Let them know who June Collier is, and just kind of give them a background, like your background history leading up to this point.
Yeah. Well, my name is June Collier. I reside here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am actually the VP of marketing for a company that does personal financial literacy. We do a lot of financial literacy training and things of that nature. But I've been really involved and interested in financial literacy for decades, what it seems like decades. And I also run a course that teaches people how to invest in the stock market. And it's a basic course that teaches them the fundamentals of the stock market. I'm one of these guys that before we do high level, I like to talk about the fundamentals because I think if you have the fundamentals, you can have a lot of success. We sometimes get overexcited and want to get to the sexy part of things, of finances. But really, there's nothing sexy about finances. It's all basic fundamentals. And so I've been doing this for over 20 years, talking and teaching people about personal finances. And I call myself just a literacy teacher when it comes to finances.
Man, I love that concept, a literacy teacher, man, because it literally, like you said, it takes us back to the basics. And let me tell you, I'm that guy. You got to start me out with the basics, man, because if not, I'm trying to go straight to the Super Bowl and haven't done one day of practice yet. So man, I thank you for just coming on and having this conversation. And I'm telling you, if you're listening, like I know for a fact the information that you like delivers is dynamic. So if you're listening right now, if you don't have a pen and a piece of paper, I'm telling you right now, you're going to miss it. So again, welcome to the show. And man, I'm just excited to get it. So just kind of give us a kind of like a real quick snapshot. Like, how did you get here? How did June Collier get heavily invested and investing to the point that now you're actually teaching it?
Well, it started out when I was 18, 19 years old, and I was in the United States Navy and on board nuclear powered submarines. And we were on patrol, and I had this guy who was there with me, and he was talking to me about mutual funds at that time. I didn't know anything about financing. I knew nothing. And we sat there and he talked to me about mutual funds. He told me to start subscribing to, told me to start subscribing to Money Magazine, Kiplinger's magazines. I had never heard of any of those things. And so the thing that impressed me, because we were actually on patrol at the time of the Persian Gulf War. And when we got back, he had made so much money off of his investment that it really got my attention. And his father was a Fortune 500 executive. And so he had learned that from his father. It had got passed down to him from his father. I didn't learn any of those things when I was growing up. The best thing that my grandfather told me was to put your money in a CD. But that was the level of his understanding of finances. Your parents can't teach you what they don't know. And so this young man, and he was my age, he taught me investing at a very early age. I didn't stick with it. I actually picked up some mutual funds like he told me to. And then when I found myself on hard times, what I thought was hard times, I withdrew those funds and used those funds. And then it was years later that I got back into it. and really it stuck at that point. And I just started learning. I started learning very heavily. I was introduced to Dave Ramsey. I think a lot of people know who Dave Ramsey is and his Financial Peace University. I attended the Financial Peace University, and that really was where a solid foundation really helped me kind of build from there. And the rest is history. I started teaching at my church, and I started teaching people about finances, about credit, and all of those things around finances. It started in my church, and from there, it just grew outside of that.
Now that's amazing, and I think the piece to understand, for most of our viewers, right? He had some things he had to overcome. When it comes down to the ways that he thought, and like you have to get over that. I talk about it all the time. That limiting belief system that views money as one particular thing as compared to another. But I do not want to attempt to steal the show for this young man, because I'm telling you, like, I'm just excited. Like, I'm a student today. I'm just want everybody to understand. Like, no, I'm not the expert. I am the student. So I'm learning from this young man just like everybody else is. And I love the fact that he articulated his journey up to this point, because as you can see, his story sounds a lot like ours. For me, I had some similar things like when I was in the Army. And so, again, thank you for your service, sir. Even though it's the Navy, we recognize it, right? No, you're welcome, man. When I was in the Army, I had a lieutenant, and this was back when E-Trade was a thing. Like, E-Trade just came out, and he was a real big investor. And he was talking about E-Trade, and I think I'm a young staff sergeant this one time. I'm looking at him like, what are you talking about, sir? And he's talking about E-Trade, and like, man, listen. And he was investing, I think at one particular point in time, E-Trade hit a split. And so he started talking about that stuff, and he was like literally giving us a class. And I'm a, young, motivated, non-commissioned officer. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But, he was really onto something. And so that's when I started looking at the Morning Stars. I've looked at Kiplinger as well. And I just started kind of self-studying, just reading and looking at the ratings and things of that nature, but I never really dived into it in any great detail of success. And I kind of went the traditional route. Of course,
Right.
Job with a 401k, just heavily investing in those things. But mutual funds, I would kind of dibble and dabble here and there, but not investing any major money into it. So this is good to hear that, your story is relatable to everybody else, because I think what a lot of people do is they go find a millionaire, and let me go follow that guy. And what you're not understanding, they already have an image of success that is way in the clouds. And most people who are listening these young men and women, they can't relate because they're speaking at such an advanced level, and most of us are still at the beginning level. So this is awesome. So let me stop holding you back, man, because I know you got some stuff to give us, and I know they're waiting on it with bated breath. So let's start talking about this basic investing concept. And I think you want to talk a framework. So let me just kind of turn it over to you, sir, and let me just give you the floor.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk about your experience. I didn't learn about the quote unquote the stock market until I started working in corporate America. And so I spent 10 years in the Navy, and I got out of the Navy and I started working in corporate America. And this was during the time when the .com era was around, and I had this guy that I worked with, and all day, all he talked about was trading stocks on E-Trade. And so it's funny that you mentioned E-Trade. He was talking about trading stocks on E-Trade, and that's how I got introduced to the stock market. But I'm gonna slow down before I get there, because we can get deep into that later on. But I want to talk about the framework of investing. A lot of people want to start dunking the ball before they learn how to dribble. And that's a sure way for you to lose your money. That's a sure way for you to fail, because you haven't learned the basic foundation of investing and structure. So I want to talk about the basic foundations. And what I consider the basic foundations, first of all, you've got income that's coming in. And so that's one foundation. I won't talk about that, but that's your employment, how you make a living and how you have money coming in. That's a foundation to your personal finance. It is a big foundation because it is normally the starting point of the resources that you have to begin to invest. But I want to talk about really basic foundations from a standpoint of debt, savings, and then investing. So I want to talk about debt first, because debt is a major robber of many people's wealth. We overextend ourselves with debt. We go out, we buy the biggest car that we can buy, we buy the biggest home that we can buy. We're very much into materialistic type of items. And while we do need a vehicle, while we do need a place to stay, oftentimes we overextend and overspend in those areas. And what I've learned is that the wealthy, they take their money and they buy assets. They buy items that will appreciate and bring them money over time. And a lot of times what we will do, and I say we, what a person will do is, if they haven't had any money, if they've never had a lot of money, they grew up middle class or below, a lot of times we like to make ourselves feel good and feel successful with items. And oftentimes those items are depreciating, and it's just stuff. And so you have to learn the difference between stuff and assets. And so by the time you start learning these things, it's more than likely you're already messed up, right? So, when I talk to people, they'll say, well, this is great if I had learned this before I got my head in the fence. But now my head is in the fence. What do I do? And so what I tell people is that we have to start focusing on getting rid of debt. Because when you think about debt, we're taking our dollars and we're paying off something that loses value over time in most cases. And so what we've got to do is we've got to learn how to control that. We got to learn how to get out of that. And so there's a debt elimination plan, or everyone should have a debt elimination plan to start eradicating that debt that they might have. Now, one of the biggest questions that people say or ask is, should I get out of debt first or should I start investing? And my answer is both, okay? Because time is important when it comes to investing. The more time that you have, the better your investments will be, because investments grow over time. And so what we want to do is we want to establish the habit of investing. So I believe that you have to put a plan together that allows you to do both. It allows you to start eliminating debt, but it also allows you to start building and growing some of your wealth. Now, before we start talking about investing, there's another step in between investing. There's a step between getting out of debt and investing, and that step is called savings. Now, savings is not the way that you create wealth. I'm going to say that again. Savings is not the way that you create wealth. You cannot save your way to wealth. But what savings do is they help you during times of unpredictability. So here's what I mean. You need to have a short-term saving emergency fund and a long-term emergency fund. The short-term emergency fund is you wake up in the morning, you go outside, and for whatever reason, you got 4 flats. Somebody slashed the tires, the car won't start. All of those are things that you're not expecting to happen in life. And you need to have funds that you can immediately deploy to get you back on track so that you can get to work, because that vehicle is tied to your ability to get back and forth to your employment. So that's a short-term emergency fund that takes care of any needs that are unexpected. And when I say unexpected, it doesn't mean that your tires are bald and now you've got an emergency, you need to get tires. We know that our tires are going to go bald. So you have to plan for that. So bald tires is not an emergency, right? If you crank up the car and the alternator doesn't, charge the battery up and you got to get a new alternator, that's an emergency because you didn't plan for that and you didn't know that that was going to actually happen. But you've got to have that short term that takes care of your short term needs. And then you also have to have a long-term emergency fund, because we now live in a world where we get pink slips, we get laid off, those types of things will happen. And it may be 6 months before you can find another job. And so you need to have enough money to take care of your day-to-day needs if you're without employment for an extended period of time. So those are both short-term and long-term emergency funds. When you're working on your short-term emergency fund, anywhere between $1,000 to $3,000 should be sufficient enough to take care of a short-term need. Where do you put that money? Well, you have to have quick access to it. So we don't put that money in the stock market. We don't put that money somewhere where it's going to take us a long time to get it out, or it's going to be in the stock market and maybe the stock market is down and you really don't want to pull it out at that point in time. So the stock market is the wrong place to put your emergency fund. Your emergency fund has to go into what we call cash equivalents. And a cash equivalence is all the items that the bank sells. And so when I say what they sell a savings account at the bank, they sell CDs at the bank, they sell money market accounts at the bank. Those are places that you would want to put your short-term emergency fund. Now, you're not going to get a lot of interest on that money, but that's not what the money's there for. The money is not there to grow. The money is there to assist you in the time of an emergency where you can immediately pull it, okay? Any money that you can immediately pull, that you have access to very, very quickly, is never going to pay you a high return. Just remember that. So if it's in the bank and it's a cash equivalent, that's what we call a cash equivalent. If it's in the bank, you're not going to make an amount of interest on it that's anything. So that's why I said savings is not investing. Savings is exactly what it is. It's to help you, like grandma used to say, on a rainy day. You know, when a rainy day comes, you've got some savings. Once you start,
the shoebox.
Exactly. You got the money in the cookie jar, right? So once you have that emergency fund established, the next thing that you want to do, and we'll establish the short-term emergency fund first. You can start working on the long-term at a later time, but we establish $1,000 to $3,000 immediately. That's like the first thing that you want to do, because Murphy will come. And we call it Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. Murphy will come to catch you at the most inconvenient times. I can tell you that since I established emergency fund, emergencies just don't happen for some reason, or when they do happen, they don't bother me that much anymore because I got the money to go ahead and take care of it. So it takes a lot of stress off your life. Once you've established that emergency fund, then we've got to establish a debt payoff plan as well as a investment plan. And so there's many different ways that you can establish your debt payoff plan. I recommend the snowball debt elimination plan. That's where you take out all your debts, you put them down, you figure out what is the lowest debt to pay off first, and then any extra money that you can contribute to that, you pay off that first debt. And then that money goes into the next debt, to the next, to the next. It's called a snowball debt eliminator, okay? And that's probably the easiest for most people to do. And so we recommend that. As you're doing that, now it's time for you to start working on your investing. And we're investing for long-term. We're investing for our retirement account. If you have a 401k on the job, that is one of the best places to typically start. And why do I say that's one of the best places? Because most companies will give some type of match to your 401k. So a lot of the companies that I've worked for, they would match dollar for dollar up to 6% of my income. So if I made $100,000, 6% of my income was $6,000. If I put in 6, they would match it with 6. So the reason why that's such a great deal is because that's 100% return on your investment before it even goes into the market, right? So I hear a lot of things about 401ks, but I say if you've got a good company that matches your 401k dollar for dollar, or sometimes 50 cents on the dollar, you're getting 50 to 100% return on your money before it even goes into the stock market. That's money that you leave on the table if you don't participate in your 401k. And so people say, well, how much should I do my 401k? I say do the full match. So if you're going to match up to 6%, the minimum I need to be investing in my 401k is 6%. If you've got debt, let's do 6% on your 401k, and then the rest of your money you can pay down your debt. Once you pay down your debt, then you can go back and increase the percentage on your 401k. But if they're going to match up to 6%, then you've got to do 6%. You're just leaving money on the table if you don't do that. And I think people get lost in that thought process. But you've got to understand the 401k or the 403b. All of these are the same. Whatever they offer on your job for retirement account, you've got to take advantage of that.
So let me can I ask a question real quick, June? Because
sure.
You're hitting your stride. You're hitting your stride, and trust me, I know for a fact as people are listening to this, they're like, oh, I got a question. Oh, I got a question. Oh, I got a question. So if you don't mind, I want to back up because
Sure.
You said a lot of great things. I mean, amazing things. But here's the thing, like, and I like the fact that you address if I make $100,000, right? What if I make maybe $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 and I got debt, right? And I know you made the mention, like, so we need to eliminate debt and we need to invest at the same time. And you mentioned Snowball, and trust me, he is 100% correct. Snowball is an amazing vehicle to use to eliminate debt. And again, whatever debt, however you choose to do it, if you want to eliminate the high interest rate debt first, or if you want to eliminate the smallest debt first, whichever direction you go, that's your choice, right? But as soon as you eliminate one debt, you take all of the money that you were contributing to that, and then you aggressively attack the next one. And so all of that debt is like